Hello, I'm Reverend Mel Caraway. I'm past president of the board of directors of Texas Impact, and I currently serve as the Interfaith Climate Coordinator for our affiliate, Texas Interfaith Power and Light. As an active member of the U.S. faith climate advocacy community, I've attended several sessions of the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. Now, I want you to try to say that 3 times really fast. United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. That's why we call it the UNFCCC. These conferences of the parties, and the parties are the signatories to the UNFCCC, are commonly known as COPs. In this year's meeting, which is being held in the United Arab Emirates, is COP 28. This year, I've opted not to attend in person, and instead, I am following the conference online. It's something that you can do also from home. You can follow online. The QR code on the screen will take you to the COP platform where you can see menus of all the sessions. Many of these sessions are being archived as on-demand webcasts that you can watch at your convenience. Otherwise, it's very difficult with the 10-hour time difference to keep up to date. Here's the second QR code for you. It's a list of side events. Side events are workshops on a wide range of topics, and they include representatives from academia, climate advocates, as well as members of impacted communities from throughout the world. This year's COP is being characterized as very high stakes, because it's the first time that the global community is assessing how progress is going on achieving the goals that were set out at COP21 in Paris in 2015. This process is called the global stocktake, and the general assessment is we've got a lot of work to do to keep global warming under 1.5 degrees Celsius. And a huge theme of the COP is the vital role that subnationals, that cities, counties, states, regions, each of these subnational groups plays in implementing the innovations and investments that will make the promise of Paris a reality. Let's listen as UN General Secretary Antonio Guterres explains.
Excellencies and dear friends, we meet on the brink of climate chaos. Emissions are still rocketing. Climate impacts are still widening. And we are about to conclude the hottest year on record. Year by year, the world's commitment to limit global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius is slipping away. And we are speeding towards a 3-degree temperature rise and showing yet no signs of slowing down. At the same time, developing countries are left without the support they need to adapt to the carnage around them and make the leap to a renewable future. Now, at COP28, the world must hit the brakes. And this must be a game-changing COP, thinking big, as the president just said. Now, keeping 1.5 degrees within reach means breaking our addiction to fossil fuels, making a fair, just, and equitable shift to renewables, and delivering climate justice. But our success will not be measured in conference rooms like this one. It will be measured in towns, cities, regions, and states everywhere. The very places that you, as local leaders, serve. Local leaders are often going further and faster than their national governments to tackle the climate crisis. Around the world, leaders like you are reducing fossil fuels, creating green jobs, cleaning up polluted air, and investing in sustainable infrastructure and public transportation systems. And every step you take is making a difference, and I applaud your leadership. But I must also ask you to do more. First, if you haven't already, Start planning now for a just transition to a net zero future. Last year in Sharm el-Sheikh, my high-level expert group on net zero provided the blueprint for a credible climate action that aligns with 1.5-degree limits. And I call on local leaders to develop comprehensive and detailed transition plans in line with the group's recommendations. Recommendations against greenwashing or delays that do not make sense in the difficult times we are facing. So these plans must set measurable and verifiable targets to reduce greenhouse gas emissions across the board. And this includes all emissions for cities and regions, as well as all emissions originating from businesses, supply chains, and the investments of financial institutions. Second, I call on local leaders to demand a seat at the table as national governments develop climate policies and regulations. And that is particularly important as countries prepare to present their next round of national determined contributions in 2025. These contributions must finally be aligned with 1.5-degree limit and must cover all economic activity and greenhouse gas emissions. And they must reflect the finance, technology, support, and partnerships required to help your communities adapt and build resilience in the face of a changing climate. The success or failure of these new national climate plans will be realized at the local level, and you must be involved every step of the way. And I'm pleased to see that several members of my advisory group on local and regional governments are here today and are contributing to the discussion with concrete solutions. And third, it's time to throw your full political support behind the renewables revolution. Fossil fuels represent the past, renewables represent the future, and I'm fully aware of the political, financial, and regulatory roadblocks standing in your way. But the writing is on the wall. The world needs to commit to a clear time frame to phase out fossil fuels aligned with 1.5 degrees. And the COP28 global stockade must also result in commitment that will lead to tripling renewables, doubling energy efficiency, and bringing clean energy to all by 2030. And as local leaders, you can lead the way by investing in public transportation, infrastructure fueled by renewables, and prioritizing clean air and jobs in the green economy. Ending climate chaos and the multiple injustices that fuel it requires all hands on deck. Your citizens are counting on your leadership, so am I. Let's stand as one and work as one to protect all communities from the climate crisis and spur the renewable, sustainable, and equitable future people and planet deserve. And I thank you.
Secretary Gutierrez made his remarks at the opening of the Local Climate Action Summit. This is one of several sub-conferences that are taking place under the umbrella of COP28. The COP28 Local Climate Action Summit was a first-of-its-kind summit hosted by a COP presidency in recognition of the critical role that local leaders play in reducing emissions, addressing climate risk, and supercharging national efforts to move further and faster on climate progress. Hosted by the COP28 presidency and by Bloomberg Philanthropies, this summit brought together hundreds of national and subnational climate leaders to transform climate finance, enhance global action, fast-track the energy transition, and strengthen resilience and adaptation at the local level. The summit was backed by the world-leading network of local leaders, as well as subnational partner organizations, including America is All In, C40 Cities Climate Leadership Group, Climate Mayors, the Global Covenant of Mayors for Climate and Energy, ICLEI, which is Local Governments for Sustainability, United Cities and Local Governments, U.S. Conference of Mayors, the Under 2 Coalition, the University of Maryland Center for Global Sustainability, UN Habitat, the World Resources Institute, and many others. The summit was a 2-day event, and it featured several presentations and panel discussions, as well as announcements of new initiatives on the part of subnational groups. Take note that all of the panelists on this particular panel are women, which is a growing trend in the global climate space, which was formerly heavily a male-dominated arena. In the early years of COP, it was almost all male, and this year, 37% of those attending COP are female. The first speaker on this panel is Governor Yuriko Koike of Tokyo, and she explained how her city intends to meet their target of zero emissions by the year 2050. Mayor Koike explains how local officials are on the front lines of climate change. She says, "We are so close to our citizens. We have to take the responsibility when anything happens." Let's listen to her now.
Thank you so much, mayors. Thank you, governor. Thank you for all of you for being here. I just want to start by saying, wow, what a long way we've come. In 2015, in advance of COP21 in Paris, there were less than 100 localities that had ambitious climate targets to meet by 2030. Now that number today is up to more than 1,000. So it's incredible progress, and the local leaders who are here, including yourselves, have seen that those emissions reductions lead not only to a big contribution to solving climate change, but delivering better lives for your residents and citizens. So Governor Koike, I'd like to start with you. You have a very ambitious net zero plan for Tokyo, and it would be great to hear about what you feel like has been the most innovative, impactful policy or program that you've been able to promote as part of that plan.
Thank you very much. But before that, please let us appreciate and thank all the decisions has made to put the local, climate action summit as a part of COP28. So I'd like to thank very much, because we are so close to citizens, and we have to take all the responsibility when anything happens. So this is a really thoughtful and meaningful decision to put this local action summit or climate summit as part of COP28. Thank you very much once again. Now, of course, climate change is in a state of crisis. This is what we are sharing, the common feeling and common decision. And to fulfill its responsibility as one of the world's largest cities with 14 million people, the Tokyo Metropolitan Government is pursuing the 1.5 degrees target and accelerating its action to realize a 2030 halving carbon emissions by 2030 and a 2050 zero emission Tokyo. Specifically, we will accelerate the shift toward renewable energy as a major energy source, as 70% of CO2 emissions comes from buildings. We have so many tall buildings and simple single family houses here and there. And so that TMG will start to mandate the installation of solar power generation equipment on houses and on new houses and other buildings, thereby tripling the city's renewable energy capacity by 2030. Perovskite, I brought a very sample of samples. This is a new solar power, not a panel, it's just a film or sheet, and it's very thin and light, and moreover, it's flexible so that you can install on the wall of the buildings. easily. So in central Tokyo, construction will begin on the world's first high-rise building that will use its wall surfaces to realize mega solar power generation. And Tokyo will become a futuristic city where every area is capable of generating electricity. The Tokyo Metropolitan Government will work with H2 Global, an internationally known institution with one of the most developed support instruments for global hydrogen today, to promote efforts to establish a hydrogen exchange in Tokyo. This is very new.
Yeah.
And in addition, we will promote efforts to form alliances with overseas cities and other entities like Masdar or Mubadala to ensure the supply of hydrogen. And furthermore, in order to increase the demand for hydrogen, the TMG will take the lead in using it and encourage the private sector to do the same. For example, more than 100 fuel cell buses are already used as a means of daily transportation. So, to make this city be sustainable with high tech, we just made a new word, an acronym of sustainability and high tech, two together become sushi. So we would like to share the common, how can I say, the common, to share the common experience and share those solutions in amongst the cities. We will close to our target. For instance, for the TMG, we are halving by 2030 the CO2 emissions, and 2050 zero emission. This is our way.
Very
Thank you.
ambitious. Thank you so much. Really exciting to hear about. Thank you.
Mayor Claudia Lopez of Bogota, Colombia, began her remarks by asserting that, quote, without social justice, there will be no environmental justice. She goes on to explain the connection between the goals of the Paris Agreement and the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, or as they're referred to, SDGs. Faith communities like my own United Methodist Church have been dedicated proponents of the SDGs, and you can learn more about SDGs at the QR code that is now on your screen.
Mayor Lopez, I'd like to turn to you. And as you prepare to leave your office, what is one accomplishment, approach, ambition that you really want to share, or you would encourage other local leaders to take on and replicate?
Well, thank you so much. And again, I want to express also our gratitude for the organizers of this historic conference of local governments in the COP. I think finishing my 4-year term in Bogota, Colombia, and Latin America is an 8 million city, is a large city. There are at least 3 things that I want to share. First of all is that the energy transition that is most important for the Global South is the food, education, income generation, freedom, and jobs. Those are the most important human foods to base social justice. Without social justice, there won't be environmental justice. People under hunger, under poverty, under exclusion, women who are sacrificing their lives in unpaid care works, sacrificing the labor force of half of humanity. There is no way we're going to be able to achieve the climate goals if we don't achieve first and invest at the same time in the sustainable development goals. So that's one thing, the order matters. The second thing I think I can share is that in the urban planning, organizing and planning cities around care, around the protection of the ecological structure of our cities, water provision, food security, and decarbonize urban mobility are the 5 urban most important issues to achieve, again, both social justice and environmental justice. And the third thing that I want to share is that organizing a city around care is building our cities to be safe for girls and women, to relieve women from unpaid domestic and care work, women under poverty, women who cannot finish school, get economic autonomy, get freedom, get political representation. They won't be able actually to move forward with their families. Rather, in the opposite direction, it will build cities that help women to have education and economic autonomy. They will move on with their families instead of their families moving upon or against the woman's inclusion. So that's what caring means, relieving. And I'm very proud to be the first city in Latin America who used the social infrastructure of the city to recognize, redistribute, and reduce the overburden of unpaid care work from women into offering services. The third thing is the youth people. Both women and youth are the driving forces for change in the 21st century. But those youth people, the present and future generations, they need the education and the skills and the green economy for have the green jobs, the digital jobs, the caring jobs that they're actually looking for. Otherwise, there will be a source of frustration if they don't achieve that. And let me summarize this also with the mobility thing. Then that's the other energy, the one we usually mention in these sort of conferences, right? Is the replaceable, the decarbonization of public transportation. So coming out, I think all mayors, we have to lead and be bold in coming out and leaving aside, living in the past, the great avenues of the 21st century, the public spaces that were mainly devoted for fossil fuel cars, and instead organizing our cities not in great avenues, but in green corridors that actually protect the ecological structure, that provide a space for pedestrians, for bikes, for electric public transportation. Don't be afraid to redistribute public space for safer, cleaner modes of transportation in our cities. We want to achieve both social justice and also a non-fossil fuel economy and mobility. And finally, there is an order. There are many things to move on. We, the local governments, we are the proximate governments to our people. People can knock to our doors, not send letters of emails. They can knock to our doors and hold us responsible for things. So if we want to improve and scale up the solutions that we have in our cities to save the planet, then we need socially responsible, politically accountable, and fiscally capable local governments. Look and build decentralization. Centralization of power and solutions is the recipe for failure. Decentralization with social responsibility, with political accountability and fiscal capability, that's the recipe for success. Caring for people so that we have citizens that can care for our democracies and democracies that can care for our planet. That's the proper order. That's the order we're building in our cities, whether it's Freetown or Paris or Bogota or Accra or Buenos Aires or Mendoza or Barranquilla. Count on us. And finally, one strong recommendation. This summit started with a bold idea, the lost and the damaged fund, so that those responsible for the problem can support those who are suffering the consequences. I encourage here, some minutes ago, the president of the World Bank, who is from India, spoke here. The president from the Inter-American Development Bank is from Brazil and spoke here. The president from CAF, Green Bank from Latin America, spoke here. You want us, the local governments, to be the driving force? Please set up the rules and the conditions so that the money and the funds from all development banks from the world can come directly to the local governments, to the subnational governments, without red tape, without bureaucratic procedures, and without get trapped in the political polarization and censorship from the national governments to the local governments. We are part of the solution. Put out the money that we have the solutions to scale up. Thank you.
Great. Wonderful, Mayor. Thank you so much.
Socially responsible, politically accountable, and fiscally capable local governments. Isn't that a great, concise, and precise description of what we should all be helping to build in our local context? I'd love to be able to share all the comments from all of the panelists at this event, but I must confess, my producer has given me a strict time limit today, but you can see the entire event for yourself by using the QR code on your screen. I want to end today's show with a clip from a global climate hero. One of the key architects of the Paris Agreement was Laurence Toubiana, who served as France's climate change ambassador and special representative to COP21 in 2015. It's inspiring to hear her share her vision for the evolution of global climate policy and to mobilize more and more people and communities.
Thank you so much, Mayor. Laurence, in 2015, you were really one of the key instrumental architects of the Paris Agreement. What do you think is needed now to go forward with the ambitions?
I can tell that today in this first time summit of local authorities, local action, for me it's really an extraordinary achievement, because when we started Paris, we knew that we have to rely, of course, on government, but climate action is everywhere, across the board. And the idea is that you have to get to the energy and urgency of citizens. So you have to in a way, embark not only the government and the representative, but people themselves. And that's why the local authorities, the local region, that was so important, and that the non-state actors are part of the Paris Agreement for the first time. They were recognized as actors, and Anne gathers them. We could not put everybody at the same place, but in the Mairie de Paris, you have them with a wonderful photo I remember very well. And so today, I think it's a natural and very welcome evolution of Paris Agreement. I'm telling every day, an agreement is not set in stone, it's a living organism. And this living organism now has to include more people, more actors in a much more stronger way. In Paris, there were still separate bodies. The government on one side, the non-state actors on the other side. I think that the moment we change that. And that's why I'm so happy to be here, to have seen Michael Bloomberg and the president of the COP, together with Antonio Guterres, with the same line saying, we have to move this forward. And what? Because what? When Paris Agreement said, we knew that I am in this climate thing since 30 years almost, which is really too long. But you see that you will have and face highs and lows in national politics. That's evident. So there, the local authorities, the citizen, are the force that can keep the things going. Just remember when President Trump decided to withdraw from Paris Agreement, that was a wonderful relief to see that states, regions, cities says, no, we are still in. It was a wonderful innovation in governance to say, no, even if the federal government can decide, we don't go in the same line. We want to pursue the Paris objective. And this is saving the multilateral process in reality. So diplomacy of cities and regions, that's super important. So in my view, at that stage, what is needed, and that's why I really recognize this wonderful initiative of Trump, and a beautiful name, by the way, very, very sort of funny, but light, but at the same time energetic name, that we have to have now for the next round. And we are in a very crucial moment. The global stocktake, we look what we have done and we look forward now. And by COP30, we'll have to design the travel, to design the roadmap, to deliver the objective of Paris even more, because we know we are lagging behind. So that's why we need the citizens, the region, together with the government, to be accountable of this promise made in Paris. And that's why I think in this new cycle, and I see now a number of governments are now ready to come back with their cities and region and citizens to commit together, and in a way to be accountable to each other. That's why then the national policies has to offer the space, the support for the local authorities, including on finance, including on governance, including on the capacity to decide and really implement the roadmaps that the citizen would have decided. And that's my final word. You cannot do that enormous transformation that we are aiming at without citizens deciding and shaping the future. You cannot have top-down decision. It will not work. You will have resistance, backlash. And why? Because there is an element, and Claudia said that very well earlier, you need the equality element embedded in the climate action. If not, we'll never get there. So that's why I'm relying on all of you to do that. And that's why I'm very happy today.
Thank you so much.
Well, friends, that's our show for today. Tomorrow's show will feature even more footage from the Local Climate Action Summit, as well as interviews with U.S. state and local officials. Join us then as we continue at COP28.